Alright guys, Alice has been reworked, and while she's still dangerous, she feels very different compared to the older version. The main reason is sustain. Old Alice could keep herself alive much longer because her ultimate not only dealt continuous damage but also reduced her cooldowns whenever it hit enemies. That meant more skills, more healing, and more pressure in extended fights. The new Alice, however, doesn't have that. Her cooldowns are slightly longer, and without that constant reset mechanic, she can't spam her abilities the same way. Because of this, she's not the long-lasting drain tank mage she used to be. Instead, she shifted into more of an initiator or a follow-up control mage, relying on tanks like Tigreal, Atlas, or Carmilla to start the fight so she can dive in and land her crowd control. Now let's talk about her passive, because this is the core of her new playstyle. Her passive is called Crimson Blood Banquet. Every time one of her skills hits an enemy, she gains a stack. Once you hit 2 stacks, a red blood circle appears around her, dealing continuous magic damage based on enemy HP, while healing Alice at the same time. The damage is actually great against tanks, since it scales off their big HP pools. But here's the catch. It only refreshes when you hit enemy heroes, not minions or creeps. So you can't just spam it in lane or jungle like the old Alice ultimate. This doesn't consume mana anymore, unlike the old Alice ult, but at the same time, it can't fully sustain her in team fights either because the healing is much lower. That's why she feels a bit lackluster compared to before. Now, if her sustain doesn't come from her ultimate anymore, where does it come from? The answer is her second skill, Doom Waltz. Normally, it's an AoE burst around her that deals damage and slows enemies by 70% for a second. On its own, decent, but not amazing. The real power comes when her Blood Banquet passive is active, because Doom Waltz triggers a second burst that deals even more damage and heals Alice for 300% of the Blood Banquet's damage. This is where most of her sustain comes from now, and it's the ability that really separates good Alice players from great ones. By timing this properly, you can extend her survivability way beyond what it looks like on paper. For example, in lane or jungle, a good trick is to start with Doom Waltz to get a stack, then use your first skill to activate the passive. By the time the blood circle activates, your second skill is back up, so you can cast it again, trigger the secondary burst, and heal massively. You're essentially fitting 2 Doom Waltz casts into a single Blood Banquet duration. Another useful tip is to watch the red timer above your health bar. That timer shows how long Blood Banquet will last. If it's close to running out, cast Doom Waltz right before it expires. That extra burst gives you another stack, making it easier to reactivate the passive without waiting for all your skills to come off cooldown. I use this trick a lot when jungling to stay topped up and keep my farm going smoothly. Her first skill, Crimson Gleam, is the same classic orb she's always had. You throw it out, it deals magic damage, and you can blink to it by casting the skill again. It's simple, but still incredibly useful for either engaging, escaping, or cutting off an enemy's path. The cooldown is a bit longer now, so it's not as spammable as before, but it's still Alice's bread and butter movement tool. Finally, her new ultimate, Throne of Ruin, turns her into a CC machine. She charges up while gaining CC immunity and damage reduction, then slams down with massive blood thorns that immobilize enemies in range. Unlike her old ultimate, this isn't about staying in fights forever. It's about finding the right timing to lock enemies in place and set up kills. The best part? You can still use her blink from skill 1 while charging, letting you reposition before dropping the immobilize. When it comes to emblems, you have 2 good options. You can go with the support emblem for the extra healing effects, or the tank emblem if you want to maximize your durability with bonus health. For talents, agility gives you much needed movement speed, while vitality gives bonus health if you want to be tankier. Bargain Hunter is also very important for Alice because she's heavily equipment reliant. She needs her core items as soon as possible. And for your main talent, Impure Rage works perfectly since Alice doesn't use mana anymore. Instead, it gets converted into healing, giving her both more sustain and extra damage during fights. For items, I usually start with defensive boots. Tough boots against magic-heavy enemies, or warrior boots if you're facing strong physical damage. Then I go for Clock of Destiny, which not only gives Alice sustain through extra health, but also helps her recover when she gets low. After that, I rush Winter Crown. This item is amazing for Alice because it gives her magic damage, HP, cooldown reduction, and the active freeze ability, which lets you survive longer in the middle of team fights. Next, I build Twilight Armor. This gives a huge boost to your health and protects you from burst damage. On top of that, its new effect heals you when your HP gets low, which synergizes really well with Clock of Destiny. The lower your health, the more healing you get, and that makes you much harder to kill in clutch situations. Once you're durable, you'll want to boost your damage and Holy Crystal is the perfect choice. It massively increases the damage of your second skill, and since your healing scales with the damage, it also improves your sustain. The last item I usually get is Oracle. This is your answer to anti-heal effects like Glowing Wand or Dominance Ice. You can also buy Oracle earlier in the build if you notice the enemy already stacking anti-heals, because without it, Alice's sustain gets cut down way too hard. Now let's talk matchups. Alice thrives against squishy backliners who can't escape once she blinks in. Marksmen like Ixia or Layla, or most of the mages like Odette and Gord, struggle when Alice catches them in her combo because she can burst them down while healing off the damage. She also does really well when enemies clump together, since her kit punishes group targets. But Alice also has clear weaknesses. Crowd control is her biggest enemy. Heroes like Franco, Kufra, or Rafaela can lock her down before she even gets her sustain rolling. She also struggles against strong anti-heal like Baxia or Esmeralda, who can reduce her lifesteal and tank through her damage. Mobile heroes like Ling or Fanny can also be tough because Alice's skills aren't the fastest, and if you miss your route, they can just fly circles around you. So when you play Alice, keep track of which enemies can shut you down. If the enemy has multiple sources of CC, play safer and wait for them to use their abilities before diving in. If they don't, that's your green light to go aggressive. In team fights, you don't want to be the first one diving in unless your team is ready to follow up. Let your frontline initiate, then blink in with your ultimate active to cover as many enemies as possible. Use your first skill to root and slow them down, and chain it with your second skill for both burst damage and healing. The key is to stay close enough to trigger Blood Banquet, but smart enough not to get focused without backup. Her blink skill is also more valuable now than ever. Old Alice could rely on her sustain to bail her out, but new Alice needs to treat her mobility carefully. Use it to reposition, chase down enemies, or cut off their escape. If you waste it too early, you'll find yourself trapped with no way out. So overall, the reworked Alice is less of a drain tank who stands forever in the middle of fights, and more of a disruptor who thrives when she plays smart with timing and positioning. She might not have the same non-stop sustain the old version had, but if you master her second skill passive, build the right items, and respect her counters, she's still one of the most threatening mages on the battlefield. That's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to me. Love you guys.
My kiss, will it grant immortality or death?